Israel and Iran are getting closer to an all-out war. The political temperature of the Middle East is rising. It would not take much to ignite a fire and an explosion if remains unchecked. Protesters in Iran were holding up a portrait of the former commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds Force, General Qasem Soleimani, during a gathering to condemn the Israeli air attacks against the Iranian consulate in Syria, implying the impending revenge of him as well. Iran and Israel are getting closer to an open military encounter after an Israeli airstrike killed a senior Iranian general and other officers in the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Israel is assuming that Iran does not want a full-scale war and will not opt for serious retaliation, even though this might devalue Iran's claim to lead an axis of resistance against Israel and the U.S. in the Middle East. Skeptics note that since the war in Gaza broke out 6 months ago, the Axis has not exercised much resisting. However, loud it may be in condemnation of what they have suffered, despite being repeatedly wounded by Israeli attacks on its generals and on senior commanders of its allies, notably Hezbollah, the powerful paramilitary force in Lebanon. Iran so far has not put forward any significant response. If Iran and Hezbollah decide they cannot continue the tolerant policy, any incident might ignite an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah. The latter have at least 80,000 trained and well-armed fighters with long experience of war with Israel. Further escalation of the Iran-Israel confrontation might bring in the U.S. if missile and drone attacks against U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq resume. These had largely ceased over the last 2 months after a drone killed 3 U.S. soldiers at Tower 22, an American military outpost in Syria. None of the Iran nor the U.S. want the Gaza war to erupt into a more general war which would be fought out across Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. On the other hand, neither Washington nor Tehran are in full control of their allies in the region. Israel may judge the situation, leading to believing that there is no limit to the losses Iran can tolerate. Possibly, an aggressive Hezbollah missile causing mass casualties in Israel might lead Israeli Prime Minister to launch wide-ranging air attacks on southern Lebanon. Hezbollah would most likely respond with missiles, ignoring Iran's strategic interests in that case. Hezbollah aggression can turn Israel-Hamas conflict into a two-front war. Israeli air power could wreak extensive damage on Beirut and southern Lebanon, but Hezbollah has a well-trained infantry, many of them battle-hardened in the Syrian civil war, so they have an advantage in battlefield as well. They possess an estimated stock of some 150,000 missiles capable of hitting all Israeli cities, which can devastate Israel too. Regardless, escalation is detrimental to all parties involved. However, Israel in this case has taken the first step, and Iran is looking for a revenge or face-saver. Unlike the conflict between Hamas and Israel in Gaza, a war between Israel and Hezbollah would be less one-sided militarily. Hezbollah previously waged a successful guerrilla campaign against Israel in southern Lebanon from 1985 to 2000, leading to Israel's eventual retreat and withdrawal. In 2006, an Israeli ground attack on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon resulted in significant losses for Israel and severe damage to Shia Muslim districts. The destruction of Beirut's Shia district of Dahia served as a model for Israel's actions in Gaza. Over the past 6 months, the U.S. and its Western allies have worked to prevent the Gaza conflict from spreading throughout the Middle East. While they have been successful so far, tensions remain high, and any incident could escalate the situation. Joe Biden's recent criticism of Israel for using excessive force against Palestinians resulting in over 33,000 deaths and 78,000 injuries is seen as hypocritical in the region. This Criticism comes despite the ongoing supply of bombs and armaments to Israel. A broader military conflict in the northern Middle East would involve multiple fronts. The so-called pro-Iranian militias, except for Hamas in Gaza, represent the Shia community in arms across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. These non-state armies are often better trained and equipped than many regular armed forces. In Iraq, the hashed al-Shabi militias receive a larger share of the defense budget than the regular Iraqi army, thanks to Iran's dominant political influence. Funding for anti-US militias in the region often comes from the Iraqi budget. Some US and Israeli commentators believe that the loss of senior generals killed in Damascus will weaken the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Israel has overwhelming military superiority over Hezbollah and other Iranian allies, but as Israel is finding in Gaza and found in previous Middle East wars, it is very difficult to almost impossible to convert its dominance on the airfield into a decisive victory. Iran knows this and would like to keep its conflict with Israel just at or below the level of an all-out war. Whether or not it will succeed is another matter.